Nobody expected them to survive. When the tournament draw was announced, experts barely mentioned their name. Television analysts spent hours discussing the traditional giants. Former champions dominated every prediction. Betting markets placed this team near the bottom of the odds. Even many of their own supporters quietly admitted that simply making it out of the group stage would be considered a success. To the outside world, they weren't contenders. They were just another team filling a spot in the World Cup. But inside their dressing room, something completely different was happening. The players knew exactly what people were saying. They heard the criticism every single day. Newspapers questioned their quality. Social media mocked their squad. Pundits claimed they lacked experience, lacked stars, and lacked the mentality needed to compete on football's biggest stage. Instead of arguing, they stayed silent. Every insult became motivation. Every prediction became fuel. Their manager made one simple promise before the tournament began. "We don't need everyone to believe in us. We only need everyone inside this room to believe." Those words changed everything. Training sessions became more intense than ever. Veteran players took younger teammates under their wing. Fitness coaches pushed the squad beyond their limits. Tactical meetings stretched late into the night as every possible opponent was analyzed in incredible detail. They knew they couldn't rely on individual brilliance. They would need something stronger: discipline, trust, and complete unity. The opening match arrived with almost no expectations from the outside world. Their opponents were considered vastly superior. World-class stars filled the other team's lineup. Commentators spoke more about how many goals the favorites might score than whether the underdogs even had a chance. Kickoff changed the conversation immediately. Rather than sitting back in fear, the underdogs attacked with confidence. Every tackle was fierce. Every pass had purpose. Every player fought as though this was the biggest match of their life. The favorites looked surprised. Nobody had prepared them for this level of intensity. Still, football rarely rewards effort alone. Midway through the first half, disaster struck. One defensive mistake allowed the opposition to score. The stadium erupted. Millions watching around the world assumed the script was unfolding exactly as expected. Underdogs had fought bravely. Reality had arrived. Game over. Except, it wasn't. The players gathered in a circle before the restart. No one blamed the defender. No one argued with the goalkeeper. Their captain simply repeated the same message: keep believing. Those two words echoed through the rest of the match. Instead of collapsing, they played even better. Every recovery run became faster. Every challenge became harder. Every attack carried more confidence. Then, with just minutes remaining, everything changed. A perfectly timed counterattack caught the favorites completely off guard. 3 passes, 1 cross, 1 unforgettable finish. The ball smashed into the back of the net. The entire bench exploded in celebration. Players sprinted across the pitch. Supporters who had traveled thousands of miles could barely believe what they were witnessing. Against all expectations, they had earned a draw. To many people, it looked like only 1 point. Inside the dressing room, it felt much bigger. That single result proved something priceless. They belonged. Suddenly, journalists started asking different questions. Could this team actually qualify? Was everyone wrong about them? The second match brought another difficult opponent, but something had changed. Confidence, not arrogance. Confidence. Players who looked nervous just days earlier now demanded the ball under pressure. Defenders stayed organized. Midfielders controlled possession. Forwards pressed relentlessly. The team functioned like one complete unit. Every player sacrificed for the person beside them. Late in the match, another opportunity appeared. A free kick just outside the penalty area. The entire stadium held its breath. Their usual set-piece specialist stepped forward. He had missed several important free kicks earlier in the season. Critics questioned why he was even taking it. He ignored every voice. One deep breath. One perfect strike. The ball curled beautifully over the wall before crashing into the top corner. An unstoppable goal. Even the opposing goalkeeper barely moved. For the first time in the tournament, the so-called underdogs were leading. The final minutes felt endless. Wave after wave of attacks came toward them. Every defender threw his body in front of shots. The goalkeeper produced the performance of his career. When the referee finally blew the final whistle, players collapsed onto the grass in exhaustion. They hadn't just won, they had shocked the football world. The headlines the following morning were completely different. The tournament's biggest surprise. The team nobody believed in. The impossible dream is alive. Yet inside the dressing room, nobody celebrated like champions. Their manager reminded everyone of one important fact. We've changed opinions, but we haven't made history. Not yet. The biggest challenge was still waiting. And what happened next would become one of the greatest World Cup stories football has ever seen. The morning after their stunning victory felt completely different from the first week of the tournament. For the first time, cameras surrounded their training ground before the players even arrived. Reporters who had ignored them days earlier were now desperate for interviews. Headlines praised their teamwork, their discipline, and their fearless style of football. Fans around the world began calling them the tournament's Cinderella story. But inside the camp, nobody was celebrating. The coaching staff knew something dangerous had arrived: expectation. It is often easier to surprise the world than it is to prove the surprise wasn't an accident. The manager gathered every player before training. He placed newspaper headlines on the floor of the dressing room. Some called them giant killers. Others predicted they would reach the knockout rounds. Television clips praised their courage and tactical discipline. Then he quietly picked up every newspaper and threw them into a trash bin. Yesterday's headlines won't help us win tomorrow. The message was clear. Forget the praise. Stay hungry. That mentality shaped every minute of preparation before their final group stage match. They studied hours of video, identifying every weakness in their opponent's defense. Fitness sessions became even more demanding. Recovery was carefully managed because every player knew the tournament was becoming physically exhausting. Despite all the confidence surrounding them, qualification was still not guaranteed. One mistake could send them home. One bad performance could erase everything they had built. The final group match began with enormous pressure. Unlike the opening game, nobody underestimated them anymore. Their opponents respected them and came prepared. Every passing lane was closed. Every attacking move was challenged. The game quickly became a tactical battle rather than an open contest. Minutes passed with almost no clear chances. The tension inside the stadium continued to grow. Supporters understood the importance of every tackle. Every clearance was applauded. Every interception felt like a goal. Then, just before halftime, disaster almost struck. A defensive mix-up left one opposing striker completely alone inside the penalty area. Thousands of fans stood up, expecting the net to ripple. Instead, their goalkeeper produced a save that would later be replayed around the world. He reacted instinctively, throwing out one hand at full stretch. The ball somehow stayed out. His teammates rushed over as though he had scored himself. That save kept the dream alive. Halftime arrived with the score still level. Inside the dressing room, nobody panicked. The manager walked around the room making eye contact with every player. We're 45 minutes away from changing football history in our country. No shouting. No dramatic speeches, just belief. The second half brought fresh energy. The midfield began controlling possession with greater confidence. The fullbacks pushed higher up the field. Every attack carried more purpose than before. Then came the moment nobody could have predicted. A substitute, who had barely played throughout the tournament, received the ball near midfield. Rather than making the safe pass, he turned past one defender, accelerated through another challenge, and slipped a perfectly weighted pass behind the defensive line. Their striker timed his run perfectly. One touch, one shot. Goal! The stadium erupted. Players sprinted toward the corner flag while the substitutes emptied the bench in celebration. For several unforgettable seconds, nobody could hear anything except the roar of thousands of supporters. But there were still 20 minutes remaining, and those 20 minutes felt longer than the previous 2 weeks combined. The opposition threw everything forward. Cross after cross entered the penalty area. Long-range shots forced desperate blocks. Every player defended with absolute commitment. Forwards tracked back like defenders. Midfielders covered every blade of grass. The captain played through obvious pain after taking a heavy challenge but refused to leave the pitch. When the referee finally blew the final whistle, emotions exploded. Some players fell to their knees. Others cried openly. The impossible had happened. They had qualified for the knockout stage. For many nations, reaching the round of 16 might simply be expected. For this team, it felt like winning a championship. Back home, the celebrations began immediately. Thousands gathered in city squares. Children wore national colors to school. Restaurants delayed closing because customers refused to leave. Social media filled with videos of families celebrating together. People who had barely watched football before suddenly believed something extraordinary might actually happen. The players tried to enjoy the moment, but they knew the hardest matches were still ahead. Their next opponent was one of the tournament favorites, a team filled with world-class stars playing for Europe's biggest clubs. Many experts believed the fairy tale would finally end. This time, however, nobody inside their dressing room accepted that prediction. They had already proven they belonged. The knockout match became an unforgettable battle. Every tackle carried enormous consequences because there were no second chances anymore. 90 minutes ended without a winner. Extra time couldn't separate the teams either. Everything would be decided by penalties. The pressure was unimaginable. Millions watched around the globe. Players stood arm in arm at the halfway line. The first penalty went in, then another. Both teams remained perfect. Round after round continued. The tension became almost unbearable. Finally, one superstar stepped forward for the favorites, a player known for scoring in the biggest moments. He struck the ball confidently toward the bottom corner. Their goalkeeper guessed correctly. He stretched full length. One hand reached the ball. The shot was saved. The stadium exploded. Now everything depended on one final kick. Their youngest player walked toward the penalty spot. He was only 21 years old. Earlier in his career, people questioned whether he even deserved a place in the national team. Now the hopes of an entire country rested on his shoulders. He placed the ball carefully, took 3 steps backward, looked up only once. The whistle sounded. He ran forward and calmly rolled the ball into the opposite corner as the goalkeeper dived the wrong way. Goal, history. Players sprinted across the field in complete disbelief. Supporters cried openly in the stands. The underdogs had eliminated one of the world's biggest football powers. Nobody was laughing at them anymore. Nobody called them lucky anymore. Now, the football world had only one question left. How far could this unbelievable team really go? The celebrations after the penalty shootout lasted long into the night. But by sunrise, the mood inside the camp had changed once again. There were no loud speeches, no promises, no declarations that they would win the World Cup. Instead, there was quiet determination. Every player understood they had already achieved something their nation would never forget. But the strangest part was that nobody wanted to stop there. The dream that once seemed impossible had suddenly become real enough to touch. The quarterfinal was waiting. Across the tunnel stood another football powerhouse, a team filled with experienced internationals who had played in Champions League finals, won domestic titles, and appeared in countless major tournaments. Their squad was worth hundreds of millions of dollars more than the underdogs. Once again, nearly every prediction favored the Giants. But predictions had stopped meaning anything. The opening whistle signaled another battle. This time, however, fatigue became the biggest opponent. Weeks of high-intensity football had pushed every player to the limit. Muscles cramped, tackles hurt even more than before. Every sprint demanded incredible effort. Still, nobody backed down. The first half ended scoreless, with both teams creating chances but failing to finish them. Early in the second half, the favorites finally broke through. A quick passing move split the defense apart, and a powerful strike flew into the top corner. For the first time since the opening match of the tournament, the underdogs found themselves trailing in a knockout game. The stadium erupted. Commentators around the world believed this was finally the end of the miracle. But the players refused to panic. Their captain gathered everyone together one more time. "We've been here before." Those 4 words carried enormous weight. They reminded every teammate of the opening match. They reminded them of the criticism. They reminded them why they had come this far. Instead of chasing the game recklessly, they remained patient. 10 minutes later, their chance arrived. A perfectly delivered corner kick floated toward the far post. One defender rose higher than everyone else. His header crashed against the crossbar. For one split second, time seemed to stop. Then the rebound fell kindly to another teammate, who reacted instantly and smashed the ball into the roof of the net. 1-1. Their supporters exploded with belief. Momentum completely shifted. The favorites suddenly looked nervous. The underdogs sensed it. Every tackle became stronger. Every pass became quicker. With only minutes remaining in normal time, another counterattack unfolded. 3 players raced forward against 2 defenders. The ball moved from left to right with breathtaking speed. The final pass split the defense perfectly. Their leading striker stayed calm. He waited for the goalkeeper to commit, then gently lifted the ball over him. Goal. An unforgettable goal. The final whistle arrived moments later. Against every expectation, they had reached the World Cup semifinals. Nobody in their country's history had ever gone this far. Back home, scenes of celebration spread across every city. Schools paused lessons so children could watch highlights. Businesses placed giant screens outside their buildings. People who had never followed football proudly wore the national jersey. For the first time in generations, an entire nation believed that anything was possible. The semifinal became the biggest match the country had ever played. Every ticket sold out within minutes. Millions more watched from home. Across the world, neutral fans adopted the underdogs as their favorite team. Everyone loves a story that refuses to follow the script. The match itself was unforgettable. Two teams fought for every inch of the pitch. Neither side wanted to make the mistake that would end their dream. 90 minutes ended level. Extra time produced countless chances but no winner. Once again, penalties would decide everything. The pressure this time felt even greater than before. The first penalties were converted, then another, and another. Both goalkeepers made incredible saves. Finally, during sudden death, fortune turned against the underdogs. One penalty struck the post. Their opponents converted the next kick. The dream of reaching the World Cup final was over. For several minutes, many players couldn't even stand. Some buried their faces in the grass. Others stared silently into the crowd. Years of sacrifice had ended just one step short of the biggest match in football. The manager walked across the field, helping every player to their feet. He reminded them of something they had forgotten. This story isn't over. There was still one final match, the third-place playoff. Many teams struggle to recover emotionally after losing a semifinal. These players chose a different path. They decided they would leave the tournament with one last unforgettable performance. They attacked fearlessly from the opening whistle. Every player gave everything they had left. The result was one of their finest displays of the entire competition. Goals came through teamwork rather than individual brilliance. The defense stayed organized. The midfield controlled the tempo. The forwards finished their chances clinically. When the referee blew the final whistle, they had secured the highest finish in their nation's World Cup history. Players embraced one another with tears in their eyes. Supporters remained inside the stadium long after the trophy ceremony ended, applauding every member of the squad. Then came the moment nobody expected. As the players walked toward their fans, the entire stadium rose to its feet. Even supporters of other nations joined the standing ovation. It wasn't just respect for the football they had played. It was respect for everything they represented. They had arrived as outsiders. They left as legends. Years later, football fans would still talk about that incredible World Cup run. Young children who watched those matches dreamed of wearing the national jersey one day. Participation in youth football increased dramatically. Investment in training facilities followed. A generation of players grew up believing they could compete with anyone because they had already seen it happen. That is the true power of sport. Sometimes history isn't written by the strongest team. Sometimes it belongs to the team that refuses to stop believing when nobody else does. Long after medals tarnish and trophies gather dust, people remember stories. Stories of courage, stories of unity, stories that inspire generations. And whenever fans look back at that unforgettable World Cup, one sentence always comes first. Nobody believed this team until they made World Cup history.